Friends, welcome to this evening lecture on ancient and medieval political thought. Today onwards, we are going to discuss module second of your syllabus. We have already finished module 1 and we are entering into the module second. And module second is about Plato and various other concepts or thought system associated with the Plato will be discussed in this module. And your syllabus prescribes Plato method, theory of ideas and theory of justice. 2. System of education. 3. Ideal state and philosopher king. And 4. Platonic communism. These are the ideas we will be talking about in the module second. And friends, today's lecture is about Plato. Who is Plato? That is the title of this lecture. So we are going to be familiar with who the hell is Plato, or who the hell was Plato. That is what we are going to talk about in this evening lecture. Friends, Plato was born 427 BC. 427 BC. So we should be knowing the life or the biography of every political philosopher. Without understanding the biography of a political philosopher, it is very difficult to comprehend their intellectual ideas. That's why this lecture on Plato, who. So as I told you, Plato was born in Athens. Plato was a Greek philosopher who was the famous student of Socrates. And he was also the teacher of the most famous philosopher of antiquity, Aristotle. And Plato's writings covered topics like what is justice, what is beauty, what is friendship, what is equality, aesthetics, political philosophy, theology, cosmology, epistemology, linguistics, astronomy, so many areas Plato has touched upon. And Plato was the author of many philosophical works. And these books are considered unparalleled in the history of Western political philosophy. These are unparalleled books in the history of Western political philosophy. He was born to a very wealthy family. His mother was Pericton. His mother was Pericton. Pericton was descended from Solon, S-O-L-O-N, Solon. And Solon was a great Athenian lawgiver. And his father, Ariston, was descended from Codrus. Codrus. And Codrus was the last king of Athens. He was the last king of Athens. Afterwards, Athens became a democracy. Plato started his intellectual life as a poet. Plato started his intellectual life as a poet. But upon meeting Socrates, he burned all the poetry he has written and started doing philosophy. And he started his philosophical career. As a student of Socrates. When Socrates died, Plato traveled to Egypt, Italy, and came to be in touch with the Pythagoreans. And almost 20 years before returning to Athens, he was an advisor to the ruling family of Syracuse. And friends, there was lack of primary sources about the life and family of Plato. We came to know more about Socrates from the writings of Plato. But there are no primary sources about the life of Plato. Much of what we know about Plato was constructed by scholars upon interpreting his writings, upon interpreting Plato's writing, and upon reading the writings of the contemporary classical historians of Plato's time. So it is very difficult to say authentically about the life of Plato, because the world know very little about who the person Plato was. And Plato's father, as I told you, was the last king of Athens. Some scholars believe that Plato was named after his grandfather. The name Plato was named after his grandfather. His grandfather's name was Aristocles. But there is no conclusive evidence to pinpoint that Plato was the eldest son in his family. But some historians say that Plato was the eldest son of his family. But some other historians dispute that argument that he was the eldest son in his family. Some writers claim that Plato was a nickname, that was not the real name of Plato. And this nickname was because of the fact that he had a broad physical build-up. He had a high physique. Like many young boys of his time, and like many young boys of his social class, Plato was probably taught by the finest educators of Athens. And he got finest education during his childhood. He was taught the doctrines of Pythagoras, Critylus, as well as Parmenides. I hope you remember I have mentioned the names of Parmenides as one of the early natural philosophers of ancient Greece. And Plato's father died when he was young, and Plato's mother remarried her uncle. Remarried her uncle. Plato's father died when he was young, and his mother remarried her uncle, Pyrilampus. Pyrilampus was a Greek politician and he was also an ambassador to Persia. An ambassador to Persia. And some historians say that Plato is believed to have had two full brothers. Believed to have had two full brothers, one sister, and a half brother. Certainly, members of his family often appears in the dialogues he had written. I told you that he had written so many dialogues, and in almost all the dialogues, members of his family appears here and there. As a young man, Plato experienced two major events during his lifetime. What are them? One was that the most important turning event in his life was that, meeting Greek philosopher Socrates. So, most of our life changes like this. When we meet some new people, our life changes. So, Plato was not an exception. Plato's entire course of life changed the moment he met Socrates. And he was deeply fascinated by Socratic dialogues. And Socrates impressed Plato. So much so that he became a close associate and dedicated his life to the question of virtue, upon which Socrates used to talk throughout his lifetime. And a second event, a turning event in the life of Plato was the Peloponnesian War. In the Peloponnesian War, in which Athens and Sparta fought against each other, Plato served for a brief time as part of the Athenian cavalry in the Peloponnesian War. He became a part of the Athenian cavalry and participated in the Peloponnesian War. But Athens was defeated in the Peloponnesian War, and the democratic form of government in Athens ended. And Sparta replaced an oligarchic type of government in Athens. And it was said that two of the relatives of Plato, they are Charmides and Critias, who are part of the oligarchic type of government instituted by Sparta in Athens, were prominent figures in the oligarchic government. And these two relatives, that is Charmides and Critias, invited Plato to be part of the government. But later, oligarchy was overthrown and democracy was restored. Plato again started a career in politics when democracy was restored in Athens after the Spartan oligarchy was destroyed. But the democratic form of government in Athens executed Socrates. The democratic form of government executed Socrates in BC 399. In BC 399, the Athenian democracy executed Socrates. Ever since, Plato became a staunch critic of democracy. He never considered democracy as the best form of government because democracy has executed Socrates. After the death of Socrates, Plato traveled for 12 years throughout the Mediterranean region. So, friends, when you travel, you get knowledge. So, traveling is one of the ancient methods of gaining knowledge. Reading is another method of gaining knowledge, but reading is comparatively a recent invention after the what may be called Gutenberg printing press was invented in the 15th century, I think, that reading became an important source of knowledge creation. But there are two ancient methods of gaining knowledge. One is traveling. Through traveling, you will get knowledge. And second is conversation. And conversation is another ancient method of gaining knowledge. You talk with the people who are supposed to have knowledge. It is supposed that you will also get some kind of knowledge. And it is through traveling through the Mediterranean region. Historians document that Plato gained knowledge and he studied mathematics with the Pythagoreans in Italy. He studied geometry, geology, astronomy, and religion in the ancient Alexandrian Museum. In the ancient Alexandrian Museum, there was a famous Alexandrian Museum in Egypt, where from Plato came in touch with Egyptian geometry, Egyptian geology, Egyptian astronomy, and Egyptian religion. Soon after this extensive traveling for 12 years, Plato started writing. And friends, Plato has written so many books. And what are them? Friends, to understand Plato's literary work is very difficult to come through all the literary works of Plato because these are all written in dialogues. But it is certain that he was a great literary figure. There are three types of literatures he is supposed to have written. Three types of literature. The early Plato, the middle Plato, and the later Plato. The first Plato or the early Plato occurs during his extensive travel time. When Plato was traveling across the Mediterranean, it is supposed that Plato has written some of the early works of the books he had written, particularly the Apology of Socrates, which was written after the death of Socrates, and other works which was supposed to have been written by Plato in his early phase was Protagoras, Euthyphro, Hippias Major and Minor, and Ion. Through these books, they are Apology, Protagoras, Euthyphro, Hippias Major and Minor, Eon. These are dialogues. Through these books, Plato tried to convey the philosophy and teachings of Socrates. What are them? Apology, Protagoras, Euthyphro, Hippias Major and Minor, and Eon. Now these are books written in the early phase of, or young Plato. You can say young Plato. And there is a middle Plato, that Plato began to intellectually grow. When he began to intellectually grow, he had written some of the finest works during this lifetime. And the most important and the finest works, or the best book Plato had ever written, historians and literary commentators argue that the best book of Plato was always the Republic, which we will study in the module 1, which we will thoroughly study the Republic. Or this module is dedicated to a Republic, discussion on Republic. And Republic was written during the middle phase of Plato's literary career. And in the book Republic, the central idea is justice. Justice. What is justice? And there is a third phase in the literary career of Plato, or you can say the later Plato. There is one more writer in the history of Western political philosophy who is also said to have 3 phases. That is Karl Marx, young Marx, middle Marx, and mature Marx. During these 3 phases, Marx had written so many works. Like that, Plato had 3 phases. And in the later phase, or the mature Plato, you will see Plato began to develop his own ideas. The literary commentators argue that what Plato had written this one was not his ideas. Rather, these were the ideas of Socrates. But literary commentators argue, in the writings of mature Plato or the later Plato, Plato was more closer looking at his own metaphysical ideas. He was talking about art, dance, music, drama, architecture, as well as ethics and morality. And he began to develop a theory of forms during this phase, the theory of forms. And friends, this is a brief portrait of the literary works of Plato. There are so many works. I didn't mention all the works of Plato. There are works like Euthyphro. I think I mentioned Euthyphro. Apology, Crito, Meno, Phaedo, Theaetetus, Phaedrus, Symposium. These are some of the other dialogues of Plato. And the last work of Plato was Laws. Then there is Parmenides. There is Timaeus. These are the works of Plato. And the last work of Plato was Laws, the last book or the last dialogue. And friends, it was in 385 BC. Plato founded the first school, or what may be called university in the Western sense, titled Academy, in the year 385 BC. And he was the president of, or he presided Academy until his death. It is believed that the school was located at an enclosed park, an academy operated until 529 C or Christian era or Anno Domini. After Christ, the academy is said to have operated until 529 AD, Anno Domini. And it was Roman Emperor Justinian I who closed down academy. He feared that this academy, Platonic academy, was a source of paganism, a threat to Christianity. So most rulers in the world fear universities. Most power-hungry politicians in the world fear students, because students who educated from universities are radicals who question existing authority. So that was the same reason why Justinian I, the Roman Emperor Justinian I, in 529 AD, closed down academy for the fear that academy is promoting paganism and is also a threat to Christianity. So it is said that academy, Plato's university, I don't know whether we can call it university, but it is some sort of a university for the first time in the history of the Western world. A university kind of thing was established in ancient Athens by Plato called academy. It existed for almost 1,000 years. It operated for almost 1,000 years. After the death of Plato, it continued for nearly 1,000 years. And the curriculum of academy, it was said, included astronomy, biology, mathematics, political theory, and philosophy. And friends, let us have a brief understanding of the political career of or political activity of Plato. What was the political activity of Plato? And friends, as I told you, Plato started his intellectual activity as a poet. But later, upon meeting Socrates, as I told you, he was influenced by Socrates and burned all the poetry he had written and started doing philosophy. And Socrates had a long-standing influence on Plato. And this influence is evident from the fact that in all the books he had written, except laws, in all the books he had written, there was only one central character, Socrates. Look upon the influence Socrates had upon this young student, that this writer called Plato has dedicated all the books to his master, his teacher, Socrates. So that was the influence. That was the charismatic personality of Socrates. It was such a powerful influence in the life of Plato. His entire writings were dedicated to Socrates, and all the protagonist, later in literary circle, the protagonist or the main character, the central character of all the dialogues which Plato had written, Socrates was the main character. Plato's life, as I told you, coincided with a period of Athenian decline. As I told you, after the Peloponnesian War, Athens was defeated and Sparta got supremacy. And Plato's life coincided with the decline of Athenian democracy. His birth came only a few years after the Periclean age. And Periclean age was the peak of Athenian democracy and Athenian culture. Pericles, about whom Thucydides has written in the book Peloponnesian War. Peloponnesian War. In that book, Thucydides, the famous ancient Greek historian, has written extensively about Periclean type of government. And years after, Plato was born, the Periclean age ended in ancient Athens. And we can summarize that the youthhood of Plato was strongly affected by the Peloponnesian War. It was strongly affected by the Peloponnesian War, which, as I told you, began a few years before his before his birth. A few years before Plato was born, the Peloponnesian War started. And because of the wealth he has, because his father was the last king of ancient Athens, he began a career in the Athenian cavalry. And when Athens fell to Sparta, the Athenian democracy was replaced by a Spartan-sponsored oligarchic type of government. Sparta founded an oligarchic type of government in Athens, which came to be, that form of government came to be known as 30, the 30, Thirty. That form of government is said to be the 30. And this happened when, during the youthhood of Plato, Peloponnesian War occurred, and in that Peloponnesian War, Athens was defeated by the military form of government that is called Sparta, which defeated Athens in the Peloponnesian War, about which the Greek historian Thucydides has written a book, the History of Peloponnesian War. And in this war, Athens was defeated and a oligarchic form of government was founded, and it was called the 30. And later, historians say that was the 30 tyrants. That form of government was called the 30 tyrants. And as I told you, two prominent members of that 30 was his relatives. I hope you remember. I told you that Critias and Charmides, who were relatives of Plato, and they invited Plato to join the 30. And Plato, among his other dialogues, has also written certain 12 epistles. Epistles, epistles. And the 7th epistle was a biography of Plato. Autobiography of Plato. Not biography, autobiography of Plato. And Plato talks about this incident in the 7th epistle that which he had written. And some of the epistles are forgeries. And the 7th epistle, as I told you, was a biographical detail of the life of Plato. And the 7th epistle was accepted by literary commentators as a standard book. And in this book, Plato describes his reaction to the events in Peloponnesian War and how he was disillusioned in politics, and he lost interest in politics because his city was defeated. His city has lost its glory, and he was totally broken by this. And when his relatives invited him to join the 30, later it was called the 30 tyrants, Plato in the 7th epistle says like this: being young, he cherished the belief that the oligarchic government would lead the city from an unjust life to a just one. That as a young Plato, he believed, which he had stated in his 7th epistle, that oligarchy will lead the city of Athens from an unjust life to a just life. But the reign of the 30 was overthrown and a democratic form of government was restored. And democracy when it was restored, Plato got again interested in politics. But during the time of 30 tyrants, he was least interested in politics. He was disillusioned. And when democracy was restored, he again got interested in politics because democracy behaved with moderation, granting amnesty to its former opponents. It granted, Athenian democracy granted amnesty to its former opponents. Once again, Plato felt the need to enter in political affairs. But all of a sudden, something new happened. What was it? That the Socratic trial started, the famous Socratic trial. It was considered one of the greatest events in the history of Western political philosophy, which was extensively written by, about which Plato has extensively written in his dialogues. Particularly in the book Apology, Plato has written about how the Athenian democracy has conducted the trial of Socrates. And in the trial, Socrates was declared a traitor because, being an Athenian citizen, Socrates intellectually supported Sparta. That is treason. Because you are born in Athens, but despite being born as an Athenian citizen, you have intellectually supported the cause of Sparta. Even though you physically supported Athens, because Socrates himself was part of Athenian military, but he intellectually supported Spartan cause. So that he was subjected to a trial by the Athenian democracy after democracy was restored into Athens, destroying or overthrowing the 30 tyrants, which was founded by Sparta in Athens. And in the trial, Socrates was convicted and he was supposed to die after using hemlock. That is a type of poison. And with this incident, friends, Plato almost lost interest in any kind of political activity, and he was disillusioned, he was desperate, and he lost all the faith in democratic form of government, because democracy works on demagoguery, that people with beautiful flowery vocabularies can persuade ordinary citizens. So this form of government is the worst form of government according to Plato. So he lost interest in Athenian politics, so that, as I told you, he started traveling to Mediterranean area of the world, where he came to touch with so many Pythagoreans and other kinds of astronomers from ancient Alexandrian Museum. And friends, it was after the execution of Socrates, Plato arrived at the centerpiece of his literature, Republic. And in the Republic, Plato believed that existing cities are hopeless. Existing ancient Greek cities are corrupt. Existing ancient cities are not fair. What Greek city-states require is a type of government in which a ruler with wisdom should rule. A ruler with wisdom should rule. Because he found Athenian democracy, which executed Socrates, about whom the Oracle of Delphi said, most knowledgeable person in the world. So friends, the seventh epistle of Plato indicates his attitudes towards politics. Plato believed that his city was poor condition. His city was in poor condition and required help. His Athenian city required help. because it lost its glory. Its Periclean glory has been lost. He lost faith in the ability of the city's political institutions. He became so much desperate, and he started to find out some remedy to revive Athens of his time. Because Plato believed that existing political institutions in Greek were all institutions of corruption. Institutions of corruption. So he thought that Athens needed some kind of political reforms. So friends, it was during this perspective, it was during the development of this perspective, Plato has written the famous book Republic. And friends, this Republic, this is the background in which Plato has written the famous book, The Republic, that he was disillusioned in